Welcome, Jose Luis, dear Pepe, to the Intersection podcast. The way we go about it is you will introduce yourself, and tell us a bit about how you got to where you are today, and we'll pick up the conversation from there and go over the topics as we have discussed. So, please take it away and welcome.
Thank you, Lise, and first of all, thank you guys for having me. It's great to be here. This is the stuff we all like, absolutely, and we try to put it into our agendas. Maybe we don't do it enough. So I absolutely love what you guys are doing. Congratulations on all the episodes I saw before. I'm a fan, so I'm honored to be here, guys.
So you are that guy.
He's the one that's watching.
He's the one fan that we have.
I'm that guy. Yeah, I'll be getting a sweatshirt, by the way, which are really cool.
Count on it.
So where do I start? Introduce myself. So I have a very long name, Jose Luis Rosa-Medina del Castillo. Pretty long name, but please call me Pepe in the talks we're having today. Otherwise, it's going to be very long. I'm in charge of the commercial department at the Euroleague now for a long 15 years. So that's basically the biggest, by far the biggest part of my professional career in the sports industry. Lived a lot of phases in there, exciting phases, and I think it's only going to get more exciting. And yeah, it's been quite a ride so far. So I don't know where you want to get started, right? With the dinosaurs, 25 years ago, or
let's start where you come from. Where you come from, Pepe?
Oh wow, that's a difficult question. You actually know that. So I'm Peruvian. Absolutely not born and raised in Peru. I had family that has mixes with Argentinian background, Dutch background. I was a kid of, I would say, expat life. So I moved from five-year-old. I moved away from Peru and lived basically everywhere. So I've lived in several different countries, Europe, South America, US a bit, and ended up in Spain. So that's basically in my short time so I'm basically all over the place. You could actually even say identity crisis, right? A question is always, and sports helps with that, where you're actually from. They always ask the question, what team do you root for, right, in the World Cup? So what's your nationality? And the first team that always traditionally was my answer was Holland, right? Was the Netherlands. But they haven't been making it lately, and I could never choose Peru because they were never in there for 30-something years. But all of a sudden, the last time I could actually say, yes, Peru, fuck yeah, Peru. And I didn't have the Netherlands. So I think I'm all over the place. But to answer your question, I would say I'm a mix of Peruvian and Dutch. That would probably define best right now.
Cool. I think that would be an interesting thing to touch on, since we've all lived in different places, kind of like how that has informed your career and your action within your responsibilities within your job. So I think we can dive into that later when we're talking shop about what you do in Euroleague. So yeah, you're in Euroleague, and obviously we have a big connection because Rayde here, he also a Euroleague guy for a long time. Now in a different role, right? But still Euroleague faithful. And I will say me and Vedran by association, because we also are, every time we
my family tickets, those are the two.
It's us too.
There you go.
It's us too. It's always been us too. So let's see, Rayde, what you gonna take
No,
take us through?
I think it's interesting. I mean, Pepe for me is like a big brother. Not that he's much older than I, but he's a guy that I admire, and I discuss a lot of things, even probably more beyond business than actually everyday business. But I have always found Pepe to have a very unique perspective, and I think it's formed because of his previous professional um, steps, right? I mean, I think Pepe, probably you could talk a little bit more in terms of, I mean, you weren't inherently native to the sports industry, even though you have a stint with a small team from Amsterdam before. But probably it's interesting for people to know kind of the journey, and actually that has been a pattern in different guests, that no one has had a straight line towards where they are now, right?
Oh wow, absolutely not. If you would ask me, um, you know, probably 20 plus years ago, if I would be working in sports, probably the answer would be no. Um, I very much came from a, you know, big multinational background kind of culture, at least on the family life. Like I said, expat kid, uh, both parents working at Shell. Um, um, so, that kind of led me at a certain point in my life to think that was the road to choose. And I actually started to do that. That's what I was preparing myself, both college wise and, the internships and everything. And the logical steps were going to be multinational and probably even Shell, right? That was what I lived for, uh, my stepdad started and finished his professional career at Shell. My mother did as well. And my father was a doctor. And, I wasn't very, scientific, so I didn't choose that road. So I was always preparing myself for the, for that road map. But then sports all of a sudden came along, and even within my internships, where I had internships at this team in this small team in Amsterdam, and I was very much intertwined with Formula One as well in Shell. So I found that sports all of a sudden was where you could mix business and passion, because I did follow every single sport. I was a sports junkie, playing, fantasy leagues, following both American sports and football, field hockey, rugby, and absolutely loved it all. Mostly team sports was my thing, and also motorsports. So I kind of found my way into that. And when I moved to Barcelona, that was kind of like the career path I was looking for. And I kind of do what every kid does, right, at that age. And you just send CVs everywhere. And one of the CVs was at a company called Michael Page, which is actually HR. So I was in selection, and I thought they were calling me with some sort of a talent program or whatever somewhere, and they might be interested in my profile. But during the interview, very quickly, it was they actually called me to work there, right, at Michael Page. And the guy leading that, which is one of my mentors, called Marco Laveda, he actually had signed a couple of sports rights holders as clients, and a couple of them. So the background I did have in sports, and the passion that I talked about it, told him I want you part of my team to actually account manage these sports properties. And that's how I came to the world of HR. But that was only for a year because I saw that was a mistake. Not my thing. But I did switch to what was one of my clients, which was actually the Euroleague. So that was over 15 years ago. Started the first day. I was actually hired to take care of a new account that was just signed by the league back then, which was Nike. The head office was in Amsterdam. The responsible for basketball on a EMEA level was Dutch lady, close friend now after so many years. But she's Dutch.
Susan.
Shout to Susan. She was Dutch. So they said, "Hey, you're Dutch. She's Dutch. Let's language barrier and let's do that." And I started in sports, and I thought, and that was me back in the day, that it would be a journey for only a couple of years. I absolutely did still do love basketball, but I thought at the end I would end up either in motorsport or football. But I thought it was a great place to learn. I thought it was pan-European, so it was multicultural. I also thought my background, because I was so multicultural, would help a lot, and the perspective you just named. So I thought, hey, let's try this, and I'll do this for a couple of years. But then I kind of got infected by, I would say, basketball and Euroleague, and 15 years later, what was supposed to be 2 or 3 years is all of a sudden a lifetime. And 15 years right now is not something you see a lot, but I absolutely still stand behind my choice, because it's an exciting company to work at.
Can you imagine? And how different must have been, since, we're talking about Euroleague around 15 years ago, a little bit more than 15 years ago. So at the beginning of what this new Euroleague is, because perhaps people remember, the all-European tournament before Euroleague, right? Which is right at the turn of the century, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, how different it is from that moment till today, let's say.
Oh, wow. It has gone through so many different stages. But to answer your question, it's absolutely different. It's another world. I mean, when I started there, it was a handful of people with a kind of a dream, right? A vision, a project. But in a sense, it didn't even, proved itself yet when I started there. When I started there, I still remember that, the second biggest league in the world was considered the ACB, not EuroLeague, to be honest, when we just started. So yeah, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in business culture. A lot has changed in business. I would even say a lot has changed in the way the game is played compared to, these last 15 years. I think everything has changed. I do think one major factor that has always remained constant is kind of innovation. Because that was there from the beginning, and it's still absolutely there now. So the will to change things. And when I talk innovation, it's absolutely not tech related, right? It can be tech related, but I'm not talking about that. It's the will to change things, right? To change that status quo, to kind of have that startup mentality where you can either change the rules to get a different product, or you can change, distribution of that sport, or or the process that we're going now, where we're going to shift probably a little bit away from the core brand and the core fan or the core consumer towards a different type of consumer. So that one of the main reasons I've stayed for so long is that constant will, and that has been the only thing that was stable across the board, was that will to change things. And the vision hasn't changed. It's just the drive to get to that place. So that the challenges change, and that's probably where we would go into sports industry. But the outcome and the roadmap to make this company great and put it at a place where it's supposed to be is absolutely something that has been there across the board. So that's probably what kept me there and will keep me there.
Great. Challenge is always welcome, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing more challenging than what we're living right now with this pandemic and the fact that you guys, like many other leagues around the world, were forced to, finish or end the seasons earlier without proper events or whatever, and now, like you were mentioning to us offline, the need for planning and planning for the unexpected and having contingency plans and so on, and just try to be as prepared as you can. I guess that's the biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the biggest challenge obviously is, I hope not a structural one, but more one that is happening now, and hopefully it will be over. But that has changed the ball game entirely, and I would say has made certain elements within the sports industry, all of a sudden very visible. So in my mind, it has put a huge challenge on the sports industry, because basically it has fast forwarded the need to change things that I think we sucked at as an industry. Right? So I think, and this is an opinion that some of the people will probably nag at me at this one, but I think we are absolutely an industry that has been kind of lazy. I think we've had a business plan that worked very well for us for the last couple of decades. Obviously, things started to change, and we got better at certain things, and there were a lot of trends within the industry, and a lot of key words every 3, 4, 5 years change, and we change our story. But overall, the business plan that was around ATV did not change. And without us changing a lot, having to change our skill sets, hard and soft, if you did things well, your business would grow. And that was almost a given without any thought behind it. But I think now we kind of have our Kodak moment, right? And for the younger people, Kodak was a huge company that was huge, and and all of a sudden, the product that was at their core changed, and they didn't cope well with that, right? Yeah. And I think that's where the industry is right now, and we're far behind other industries. Even in the entertainment industry, I think the music industry has done very well in that transition. And in our case, I think we're still coping. I think we're still changing. I think we're still being reactive about it. I think some rights holders do it very, very well, but absolutely some absolutely don't. to go more into we're kind of like that last paper industry, I would say, and it's a digital world, right?
Yeah.
It's
No, but
also
actually,
kind of yeah.
no, I mean, we talk about this a lot, and actually, most of our fights, if we can call it fights, are about trying to accelerate and push transformational, even at a small scale, but which in the long run will be substantial. And actually, this is probably the call of the moment, because no one was prepared for this, and actually, this pandemic has been a great equalizer of the realities across the industry, right? And the difference is that when you think about sports or competitions or clubs differently, everyone has its stature in the industry. So if you think about Europe, I mean, football is at the top. Then depending on the market, it's basketball, or it's motorsports, or it's tennis, or whomever.
Or hockey, like here in Czech Republic.
Yeah, or hockey, like in the Czech Republic, or in the Nordics, and so on, handball, and so on. But the reality is that if you are part of an ecosystem like we are in basketball, that we more often than not are trying to punch above our weight, we are accustomed to shock more often, and we are obliged to actually change and transform along the way. So this situation it's an advantage. I mean, that's the way we see it, because right now we are doing tremendous things in terms of how we are approaching the product and how we are selling the product, that we just accelerated the plan, because that was the precise moment. And TV or media rights in general is a big chunk of the market, but the next shock or the aftermath of this crisis will come there. We had a conversation with another guest in another episode that will come out soon, which is how the media industry is completely different from what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because of how the consumers are completely different in terms of how they consume the media or sports in general. And actually that's the battleground. Now, what this caused is that everyone had to stop playing. Some could resume, some others didn't. And now the ones, everyone is kind of back playing the games, but it's a different game. And it's something that actually needs addressing. And as Pepe said, I mean, we've been lazy in this industry. I mean, whenever you saw a big check, that was some deal with it, but you actually didn't transform or prepare or had a group of people thinking of what's next to be ready. Very few people in the world of sports have done that.
I absolutely agree with you. Now, I don't want this to sound like a doomsday scenario, because my personal opinion actually is that we're absolutely not there. I still absolutely feel very positive about the industry's future. Very positive. First of all, I'm a positive person. I always thought negative people or pessimistic people are always right, and so we can't have that, right? That pessimistic people are right. But coming in from a positive stand, it's absolutely not doomsday scenario. So even though I think attitude change is important, and structuring the right processes to modernize our business are absolutely important and key, I think the core or the key pillar that makes sports and investing into sports attractive is absolutely still there. I hear a lot of executives that kind of are evangelizing this, doomsday scenario probably a bit too much. And I always ask the same question. I mean, in its essence, sports and the business around it, that in my mind goes very much towards the fact that sports is culturally relevant. That's what it is. That's sports USP. That's what makes sports unique. It's culturally relevant. So it's part of people's conversations, right? And that's what you're selling. I mean, sports is still relevant. It's still very much culturally relevant. There's very little in the world besides, music, cooking, traveling, and that has even become difficult. That is culturally relevant, right? And that hasn't changed. As Rayde well put, the only thing that changes is probably the way people consume it has changed, but it's still very culturally relevant. And we still have, the fact that a insurance company can be very dull, and sports puts a dull company in a place that can actually be exciting. It can be part of an exciting conversation.
Or an energy company.
And yeah, I didn't grab the energy one, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's who the hell wants to talk about energy companies, banks in a nice way? You don't want that. I mean, your body asks you to talk about pricing and that it's too expensive.
And sorry, but I mean, and it's great that you two are on, because like I've been thinking about this a lot. A lot of you guys sell a platform, right? So brands and properties can integrate to you and make the doll tolerable or better in a way. But a lot of that is predicated to that live event, and still in the module of any other big sports property or a sports event, it is the event itself, is in place, in arena, around it, whatever, a structure that is that brings that added value to that property, right? How do you, we don't have to get into too much specifics, but how do you guys approach the restructuring of your offering to try to be appealing for those energy companies, those banks or what have you, so they can still see that value in what you do?
Mm-hmm.
I could answer.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I saw you stroking. I knew you wanted to jump into it.
You wanted.
No, but I'm not a guest here. I'm not a guest.
Yeah, it should be Jose Luis, and you can then add to whatever.
Right. Let's do that.
I mean, as I told you before, it is absolutely still about cultural relevance, and obviously, what defines that is that it's a sport that's going on, right? So it's culturally relevant when it's played, right? And there's a whole bunch of layers around that you can build, and I mean, your focus was on live, but if you start to analyze that or what it implies, it would mean that sports would become better if there's more people there, right?
Yeah.
That's what it implies. Yeah. And for a long time, that was a tendency that have happened throughout the years. If you look at infrastructure, football arenas went from 20, 30, 40,000 people to
100,
to 100,000, right? And that was a tendency within sport, because that was what sport meant. That was the place you could live sport. We don't live in that era anymore. This is one of the ways you can live sport. But I can tell you, my son is playing FIFA or 2K, and he's living sports, man. He knows the players.
Yeah.
And he's not going to game. Maybe he does once every X. Now he can't, but he's living the sport in a very different way than you and I am. And there we come to the defining factor, which is the time you spend on something. It's not the amount of money you're in, the amount of time or money you spend in that arena or whatever. It's the time you spend around that sport, which makes you, a fan that you can build, segment, offer different properties to, etc. So that's a defining factor around time. And there's a whole layer of consumers you talk to. I mean, there's people like me that I just talked a minute ago. I'm a sports junkie, so I spend a shitload of time in a whole variety of sports. My wife, Catalan from Barcelona, she couldn't care less about football, but she's a Barca fan, and she buys a shirt for her son every Christmas, right? So she's a consumer as well. She'll spend time on following the sport, you know, in the key moments when the team performs well, you know, that she'll know the top players and will buy the shirt that the kid wants to have, right? And so I spent shitloads of time in a variety of sports, so I want a whole different experience in that sport that rights holders have to do for me and make my clock tick, and my wife has whole different ones as well. So to acknowledge the fact that we've changed as a platform, and acknowledging the fact that you can transmit and make appealing products to a whole wide range of consumers is one that sports has to do. We cannot get stuck into that, because even to go to the arena example a minute ago, went to 100,000 people. Now the tendency is to actually take that down.
Yeah, it will
the tendency when they build new arenas is actually they make them smaller, but it's the spaces for people that want to have an A+ experience at the arenas. So it's a place that, you know, has kick-ass experiences in the arena, but it only has 40,000 people. And within that, you can go full VIP, you can go bar, you can go this, you can go that, and you have, but it's going to less people. So the tendency went for more people, because that was the core product, live. So let's bring more people there. Toward no. I mean, we have to focus on a certain client to go there, and we'll actually make our arena smaller and more luxurious. And that's what we're going to focus on, right? So to answer your question, I think the challenge just became much bigger. I don't know if Rayde, I'm in line with what you were thinking.
Perfectly. I mean, the thing is that the live event, I'm talking about basketball as an example, which is what we sell every day, right? Is a 2-hour broadcast that has to be consumed live. Then you have other spillover content, which is highlights or backstory, side stories, whatever it is, that has another moment for it. But essentially, it's a 2-hour broadcast. That's a very small window for the time of available, you know, time for the people to actually consume sports. So when Pepe and I are strategizing in terms of how to approach that, there are two principles that we need to always keep in mind. I mean, not always we cannot keep it in the center focus, but we try to do it, which is that on the one side, what brands from the partnerships perspective, which is mainly Pepe's remit at the Euroleague, what they look for nowadays is for platforms to deliver incremental revenue. If we are a cosmetic addition to the marketing plan of a brand, it's a slim chance that we'll get, you know, many deals that way. Some brands might need it, might need the awareness, might need the cloud that we can provide, and that's about it. The big brands, the brands that everyone wants to work with, the big fast-moving consumer goods brands, the big financial services brand, et cetera, they want incremental revenue. Which new consumers we can bring there? And that leads to the second part, is that we created a top premium product for the EuroLeague basketball fans and the basketball fans in general here in Europe, which are the ones that can consume it live and have easy access to all the pieces there. We have also an overseas audience as well, right? But the reality is that in marketing terms, it's a very localized strategy for us to be able to deliver not only access to that hardcore fan, which usually we're very good in delivering because those guys are already engaged with us, is actually the tier in the funnel above, which is the sports general fan. So think it differently. Pepe's fans of pretty much every sports on the planet. What rugby needs to do to engage with Pepe? Pepe consumes more basketball than anything because of his job, but he likes rugby as well. That's the increment. That's the potential incremental consumer for the brand,
Right.
and that's the type of work that we need to do. Then there's a whole, rethink about how you understand the data, you understand the demographics, and so on. I personally am anti many things in marketing, and one of the things that I'm anti is about calling data big data, because the bigger the data lake, the less useful it is. We need to focus on niche data. Do you remember Chaucer Barnes, right?
Yeah.
The bell cord. If you try to hit the middle of the bell, you are hitting no one.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
Pick your lanes and attack those lanes. So that's the type of work that we're doing.
So finding where you can this very good buzzword cross-pollinate between.
Correct, and be a platform that is useful for partners, which is in this case, or even TV partners, or actually for brands to be useful for having them, allowing them to have incremental revenue.
Yeah.
And I'm including also the TV partners there, because now you have the subscription models, but in the end, everyone, and that's another conversation that we had already here, everyone is tending towards advertising, even OTTs. That's the reality, because you cannot sustain the business model just on subscriptions, because fans are picky now, and they are disconnecting, and they are cord cutting, and they are very, very focused on what they want to consume and pay for. So you need to go to advertising, right? And for an advertising-based model to work, you need to be able to provide as well incremental revenue opportunities. So it's not about hitting, the widest platform or the widest bell cord. Is to be able to provide very segmented ways in which you can engage with different fans.
Yeah.
So you need to do that as a property, and you need to do that as a media platform as well.
Yeah. And that probably takes me to a point, Luis, just to answer the question, and that's probably where I just emphasized. 15 minutes ago, we kind of suck at the fact that to be able to successfully take that process and bring it to something positive, relevant, and scalable, what you need to do is something that's very simple. It's knowing your fan, knowing your consumer. And the sports industry doesn't. It does not know its consumer, right? So you could arguably say, in the world we're living at, where the Googles of the world absolutely know consumers. Let's take amazing long-term partnerships like Heineken and UEFA, right? At a certain moment of time, do you actually need UEFA to talk to hardcore football fans? Or can you just tell Google, okay, I want to talk with these fans, and I'm going to do it that way. So rights holders are within a challenge to say, hey, I've got content, and content is king, and that has always been my remit. That has always what I sold. But I didn't know my fan well enough to say that precise content is what that precise guy would like. We didn't know that. We had, huge segmentation, big data, as you said.
Isn't that sorry, Pepe? Doesn't that open the door, let's say, for platforms like yourselves to partner up with this big companies like the Googles and the Facebooks and the whatnot, because if they know everybody and they understand our who we are, how we consume things, and they actually know what contents play better with us and at an individual level, it makes it I don't know, I would say like it would make it a logical approach to say I would like to partner up with a Google to develop some programs that would help me understand better my customers and at the same time.
By partnering, you mean paying them? That's how you define partner?
Well, there's different ways, at least I know, because Google obviously doesn't need to jump into your platform and advertise, right? They don't need that. And you, in essence, by what you described, and by the way, if this section doesn't work, we could cut it out.
No, it works actually. No, but to your point, that, and this is something that we've been discussing in my remit in terms of the advisory with Pepe and the rest of the sales team. Shout to the guys. It's actually that evidently, these big platforms have cornered the content space.
Yeah.
So you have the biggest media company in the world is the company that doesn't produce a single piece of photo, which is Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Right, or Google or whomever.
Yeah.
But what they gained is, and this is also goes to the laziness of the sports industry, is on the back of the sports industry, we've given them content and access to our fan bases, and they have been better than us in segmenting those and understanding them better. Mm-hmm. Also because they can take those fans, and out of the sports context, they can provide them the whole world, which is something that we don't have. Yeah. So that's why they know them better. And that's why now, if we need to access those fans and to be able to engage with those fans, we need to pay them. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that you need to find ways in order to have mechanics that I wouldn't say that we will bypass them anytime soon, or probably never, but you need to have mechanics to be able to understand on your own that relationship and that consumer journey with your fans. And the bigger the fan base, from Euroleague fans, basketball fans, sports general fans, general market fans, or general market consumers, the better, because that's what you can offer then to your partners, right?
Right.
Absolutely. And that changes, for me, an industry obsession that were likes. Let's get likes. That was an industry obsession, right? That's not the case. The obsession are the users, right? And that is the obsession, that funnel of the users. And what the sports industry has done very well is to sell these fans, but we sold the users. Well, let's go to the subscription model Rayde just talked about. We sold those users. These platforms have the knowledge now about our fan base and what they're watching, what they like, what they don't like. And we don't. So we have to catch up, and that's vital. This is, for me, the Kodak moment. We have to focus on users. And when I say users, it means to know your fan and be in a place where you bring them to your platforms, your database, that you know them and that you can reach them. And that has to be an obsession of the industry to have, to keep growing and to still be in a place where you can offer that culture relevance to brands.
So that means that it translates to an expansion of your platform or your existing platform. I mean, you have a tremendous offer, I would have to say, offering in terms of the application and the Euroleague TV. It's really high quality. It's almost as being also on the NBA application, watching NBA games. Is the same. Let's say user experience.
Same tech.
Same tech. All right. Okay. Cool. That's what's up. And then what's next? What's next in the road for Euroleague offering? If we can.
Well, before we jump into that, I will be remiss if we're talking about performance marketing and engagement and so on. And I would like to have Vedran's perspective, because his business is not a B2C business. And but those B2B companies actually are also, potentially prime targets also of engaging through the platform because of different mechanics and different perks and things that we can offer. But I would like to hear his take on that.
I mean, I have a few things that listening to you, Pepe, that are coming through my head. And one thing is this fan experience that we talk about, and how do you engage with fans now that we don't have the live event. And for me, EuroLeague as a property has always been very interesting in the fact that it's not like the NBA. It's not one big market. It's actually 27, 28 different markets. And you know, me being Yugoslavian, for me, live experience is it. Especially if you go to, you know, a game of Partizan, or if you go to Red Star, that's like 90% of the content there. You have that passion. And I always, now that you're talking about it, I'm thinking about how is it that you are able to then, in terms of target customers across so many geographies? Because when somebody like a B2B or even a B2C, when we think about where do we want to invest our money, it's about what gives us the most coverage for the investment that we have, right? And you talk about as well this aspect that the sports industry is a bit of a laggard in terms of using the interests and so on. And I personally, I mean, I'm looking from outside in, and the performance marketing aspect has gotten to such a level that you're able to cater customized content to every single person if that's what you wish to do. And my question would be, I guess, is how do you from EuroLeague target exactly this? I mean, maybe the journey isn't there yet. Maybe you can't get them an exact, so you can't get them at the exact customer journey that you want to deliver them, either the promotion or to deliver them that content. And for me, that's kind of always the mind-boggling thing that I think about, like EuroLeague as a mixture of 27 markets, and how do we actually do that?
And I think that's precisely spot on what the main concept should be, right? So there's no one size fits all in this aspect. There's a very wide range of consumer base in Europe that look for sports or look to basketball or look at EuroLeague and have a whole different level of necessities. And so big data doesn't do it for us. What we need to do is choose our lanes and find out tailor-made on a city level. I would even go as far as going city level, not country level, to truly understand what ticks the boxes of our fans. Divide in those cities what makes their context, and build the property and the offering around that, and the platform that we're delivering to B2B. I'll give you an example. So you just said it, right? So a Partizan game, Red Star, full fans, arena, passion. I mean, that's what ticks your box, right? You're a hardcore fan, and that's what you would love. And that is, in a sense, what was so core to the EuroLeague for so many years. But if you talk to Adidas right now, what do you think is their top basketball market?
I don't know, maybe Germany. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's
if we're talking about Europe.
It's actually France, followed by the UK. Then comes Italy, and then comes Germany. But let's go to France and UK. I mean, if you look at all the researches, it's not per se number 1 and 2 basketball markets in Europe right now. They're not. They don't have the biggest funnel. They don't have the biggest following and fan base. But they are the biggest markets for them, because of what the sport means to the people following. And they probably follow the lifestyle aspects or the cultural aspects of the sport much more than they follow the sport themselves. But that leads you to inherently think about it in another way. The basketball consumer there is very different than the basketball consumer you just described, which is yourself.
Mm.
So we have to build different products, in very, very different products for these two types of people. And one size does not fit all in the same country. So we're going full on city. That's absolutely a discussion we've been having with Rayde, and we're going to focus on core cities in Europe in the future and build from there.
Any hints on which cities are the
Not
focus?
Prague.
Can that be shared? No, not
Probably
Prague.
I'll put it on the fifth quintile, CD 80 or something like that. No, but it's interesting because actually that's where, and to Vedran's point, that's where when we go down to city level and understand the consumers, not the current ones, all on the contrary, the ones that we want to have, because those are going to be, the guys that in 5-10 years will have their purchasing power. It's understanding how is their let's say human being journey, how is their journey, and how we can be embedded into that. And to that point, and actually in that conversation on the example of Adidas, that's why Paris or London are strategic cities, because it's about a let's say an adjacent point to the basketball performance one is the cultural aspect and the lifestyle aspect of basketball, but that manifests in street art, in music, in fashion, footwear, anything but performance.
Yeah.
And actually that's a space that we are also trying to occupy and be, as a credible force there, but because that's where you make the connection to the consumer, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the previous question, since we are pretty much approaching the hour. What's next in terms of the expansion of Euroleague's platform and offering?
I think on a strategic level, and we've said it openly, we throughout the years we've gotten very good at offering a better product towards the existing fan. And the existing fan liked that product so much that it has doubled, if not tripled, the amount it spends on Euroleague. Is that in ticketing? Is that as a subscription? Or is that in whatever? Which means that, by changes, tweets, format changes, you offer more of what they love, and they spend more euros on that, and that's what we're doing very well. But you can only go through that exercise so many times. I mean, how much more money will a broadcaster pay in the core markets is a question mark, right? Your future cannot be based on the same core markets. So I would say if I talked about an obsession, which was users, just plain and simply put, and I call them users as opposed to fans, because of what Vedran just said. I mean, fans could probably be thought of people that spend a lot of time, want to go to that event, want to be jumping to a Red Star game. But if our first obsession is users, our second obsession should be new markets. And there, the obsession is going west. Everything that has to be in the right place are in the right places in those countries. So there's great grassroots following. It's growing in the right places, meaning in the cities. It has infrastructures. It has good arenas. Has strong brands in the country that are part of this. So I would say, again, if the first obsession was users, the second obsession is going west, and that is absolutely where you'll see a lot of efforts, and you'll see that innovation I was talking about. Is that the right teams, the right business, the right brands, and everything of what a sports ecosystem is built in the right countries.
Yeah. Great, cool. Rayde?
No, I mean, as a non-guest, it's spot on. I mean, when you look at it from the macroeconomic levels, I mean, that's the next frontier for basketball in general, but actually for the EuroLeague. And that's the strategic focus, going west and being able to have a meaningful connection at a city level with the pockets of fans that you want to engage and that you want to present to your commercial partners and your media partners and so on. And we are, and I always say we, because I felt that I never left the EuroLeague. I think we are succeeding in that because we've seen how that worked from 7 years ago. It's starting to pay dividends now in Germany, which it has been growing. I mean, you have strong brands there, strong teams in the two key cities that you need to have there, and that's something that you start to hint in France as well. So yeah, that's there's not much to add there than to actually continue the journey and continue to build up. And if anything, this crisis, because out of any crisis there's opportunity, has leveled the playing field and has helped also the industry and ourselves to set out the concrete let's say priorities and criteria that we need and that we know that we need to exercise in order to continue to grow. And that's what we're doing.
Nope. Well, I would say thank you, Pepe. That was a very good conversation. First of many, I hope. We count on you being a recurring guest and talking different stuff. And hopefully when things keep developing on your side, on your league, we can bring you back and talk more about them. And it would be, talking basketball is always good with this crowd. So
thanks a lot, guys. I mean, it's been a blast. Like I said, I would have hoped this was like an inherent part of our jobs, right? Talk sports and talk business and talk shop.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed myself a lot. So I'll very happily accept that to be reoccurring.
All right.
So thanks a lot, guys. I'll keep watching the show.
Appreciate it.
New episodes and thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate it. Cool. This episode is brought to you, as always, by The Connect. The Connect is Rayde Luis Baez. Follow the Intersection podcast in your favorite podcasting platform. Leave us a review and share it with a friend. This will really help us be found by more of you interested in the topics of sports marketing and deal making. Until the next one.